How's it going, y'all? Thanks so much for coming to the session. My name is Jacob Talbot. I am lead on marketing for Twilio.org and product marketing for Twilio for Salesforce.
And I'm Charlie Weems. I'm the product manager for Twilio for Salesforce and the tech lead for Twilio.org.
Awesome. And we are super stoked to talk with y'all about how you can engage your audience over SMS with Twilio for Salesforce. And just to give you a sense of where we're going to be going, first we're going to talk a little bit about consumer preferences, then show some of the power of integrated communications with your CRM. We're going to go through a demo, and then we'll have some questions at the end to talk with y'all. So at the outset, we believe that every organization should have access to the right tools to engage their audience. It doesn't matter whether you're a Fortune 500 corporation, you're a disruptive startup, or you're a nonprofit, right? You should be able to reach people on with the right message, on the right channel, at the right time, no matter who you are. And this seems like a simple concept, but in practice, we see that organizations just aren't able to do this consistently. And when we look at some of the data, we see that consumers really want this, right? And in particular, they want to be engaged more than ever over mobile messaging. In fact, 9 out of 10 consumers say they want to engage with businesses over mobile messaging. And 85% want to not only engage, but they want to engage in a conversation. They don't just want those outbound alerts, they want to talk with you. So that's nearly everybody, right? Nearly everybody wants to talk with organizations on their preferred channel, on messaging. But what's kind of scary is that 60% of consumers are telling us they're frustrated with the lack of information that they want on the channel they prefer. So there's this really strong desire to get information, but we're just not meeting them as frequently as we need to. And that's kind of a downer, but there's actually a huge opportunity on the other side of things. So we see that 53% of consumers are more likely to shop with a business when they can reach them on their preferred channel and they can message them directly. And that's the really important part, right? That they don't want to just get those outbound alerts. They want to engage in a conversation. They want to be able to message people when it's the right time for them to get the resources or information that they need. So we've got this really strong desire. We've got a bit of a pain point because we're not meeting consumers as frequently as we need to on the right channels, but a huge opportunity to do better and to get their business when we reach them on the right channel. So the question is just where do we get started, right? Who here uses Salesforce? Yeah, you're in the right session, so good for y'all. We have arrived. And so we heard this from a lot of customers, that they're using Salesforce to manage their customer data, their constituent data, and they wanted to extend the power of their CRM to SMS in particular, but mobile messaging in general, to reach their customers and constituents using the data they already track and using the tools they already know. And customers come to Twilio because they know that we have the power of programmability to provide the global connectivity, the right channels, phone numbers, and reliability all around the world. So we wanted to meet this customer need, and we saw that there was a big opportunity in particular with Salesforce and with SMS. It was an overwhelming desire to reach people with the CRM and that channel. And so we started taking a look around to understand what does the ecosystem look like today. And we saw that there were two main options. First, there were existing applications. So there are other ways to reach organizations or reach your constituents over SMS with Salesforce. There's some great applications out there, and there's some that are less good. But we saw 3 things that were missing from applications today. We heard it again and again. The first one is that applications weren't conversational enough. And we heard from Jeff today that the pain of you send out a campaign message to a group of people in your audience, and then someone decides to text back. And then maybe they hear crickets, or they get a form message that doesn't meet their needs. And that's a terrible customer experience, right? When people are coming to you saying, I want to talk with you, let's have a conversation, and you can't respond back, that's just not going to work. Second, organizations found that some applications were pulling too much on their admin resources. So it might take multiple admins a lot of time to manage some of the workflows on different applications. And a lot of organizations have one admin. They can't devote all their time to setting up SMS. They needed to be able to manage other workflows at the same time, manage all of their users' needs, while also adding SMS. And then third, organizations didn't want to be locked into some of the features. For example, if you wanted to add another channel to your communications and the application you had chosen didn't afford that flexibility. So then we flip to the other side of the coin. You can build a custom integration. And Twilio has long enabled organizations to build integrations with Salesforce across lots of different channels. And for a ton of organizations, that's the right way to go when you have custom needs. But we saw a few things that weren't meeting the needs of all of our customers. First, it takes some time to build a custom integration. We're working with organizations that maybe were setting up a campaign to go out at the end of the month or have an upcoming event, didn't have time to build and test and launch something into prod. They needed something quickly. Or maybe they didn't have developer resources, or the developer resources they did have were already allocated to other projects, and they already had a fully stacked roadmap and couldn't allocate the time to that SMS integration. But more than anything, we saw organizations building very similar feature sets over and over again. They wanted that conversationality. And when we saw this consistency, we didn't want developers building the same tools over and over again. We wanted them focusing on the code that counts. So essentially, what we were faced with was we wanted to bring together the power of that CRM, of Salesforce CRM, the 360 view of customers and constituent data, with all the power of Twilio communications, with the global connectivity, with phone numbers, with the scalability of both of these platforms together to reach your constituents. And that's ultimately why we built the Twilio for Salesforce app, which is available now in the App Exchange. And it's truly the easiest way to get started with SMS in your Salesforce instance. It's simple to install and configure in just a few minutes, and it relies on all of those standard Salesforce objects that you're using every day, like your contacts, leads, and campaigns. And it uses native Salesforce components, so it's easy for your users to get set up, sending a one-to-one message, sending an outbound campaign, or triggering automated alerts. And importantly, every message you send out can be the beginning of a conversation. Every message that comes back in from your audience, you can reply to and engage in that conversation. And then lastly, we needed this to be flexible, and it is. So you can extend, for example, to Twilio Studio if you want to integrate a bot to automate some of those standard message flows that you have with your audience and store all of that data right into your Salesforce instance. And it also comes with a Salesforce helper library, so you can extend to the rest of Twilio's channels using native Apex classes. This is the fun stuff for me. So this is what it actually means for an organization when they're using Twilio for Salesforce. One of our early adopters was Live Different. They're a Canadian nonprofit that runs volunteer service trips all around the world. And they've been using Salesforce since 2006 to communicate with their students and manage their student data. And they've been sending emails for a long time. But does anyone have a teenager at home? A couple of nods. We know that teenagers are far more likely to engage over messaging than they are over email. So Ashley Smart, their admin, knew they needed to adopt SMS if they wanted to really engage their audience. And Ashley wanted to come to Twilio because he knew that Twilio offered that global connectivity and the phone numbers and the scalability that he needed to reach his audience. But the challenge was he didn't have a developer on staff. So Twilio for Salesforce was a really good way for him to be able to quickly install SMS into his Salesforce instance. It took about a half hour, and then immediately had access to enabling his audience, all those students at their events when they're going out and meeting with people in schools, to reach out and begin that conversation and begin that relationship. And I'm really excited to say that it's actually been so successful just opening up that channel, starting to listen to people and building that relationship that they're now extending their use case to fundraising too, so they can engage their students' families. Now's the really fun stuff. So now we're going to get into a demo and show what this actually looks like in practice. And we're going to do this in the context of another one of our customers, the Oregon Humane Society. And OHS uses Twilio for Salesforce as part of their largest annual fundraiser, Doggy Dash, which is a human puppy walkathon, or runathon, depending on how fit your puppy is. And they use Twilio SMS to connect with their fundraisers throughout the course of this event. We're going to take a slight spin on it, and we're going to show what it looks like when they want to level up their fundraising using Twilio for Salesforce. So I'm going to kick it off to Charlie here. We'll walk through a demo.
Great, thanks, Jacob. Transition over here real quick. All right, so as y'all can see here, we have Salesforce pulled up and I'll blow this up a little bit more so you can see it. And our contact list in all its glory for our nonprofit. And as you could imagine, this list is pretty good. We've got some folks in here. We can go and click on them, and we can see some of the components in here. We have the one-to-one component that you can do messaging with. But let's imagine our boss decides that we want to do a big volunteer drive, and we want to onboard a lot more folks into this organization. And to do that, we want to send out a bunch of flyers, and maybe we want to put up some billboards and get some signs on buses that say, text into this number with a keyword to volunteer with the Oregon Humane Society. Well, in this Salesforce instance, we have opt-in keywords configured that come as part of the package. And you can see I've created one here that's called volunteer. And I can set this up basically to collect opt-in records and then connect that to a campaign that we have people text into. So you can see I've created a volunteer summer campaign here. So every time someone who's new texts in with a volunteer keyword to our phone number, they'll get that campaign started. And that's great, but just to talk you through it a little bit more, what we're actually going to see when those numbers text in, these are folks who are net new to our organization, who've never had an interaction with the Oregon Humane Society. We're basically going to see a phone number and the word volunteer that they've opted in with. So wouldn't it be great if we could actually have a bot respond back and on an automated basis ask them what their first name is, what their last name is, and then populate that data back into Salesforce? And what I actually have going here is a process builder process that kicks off Twilio Studio whenever a new opt-in is created. So it's going to reach out and follow up. And if you're not familiar with Twilio Studio, it's our drag and drop chatbot editor here. Has a few steps that I've outlined. It collects their first name, just says, thanks for offering to volunteer with Oregon Humane. Gets their last name, gives them a confirmation that a volunteer coordinator will reach out, and then updates that data back into Salesforce. So I'd like to have Jacob go through this as our first onboarding volunteer here. And I'm going to put up his phone right now.
I'm ready. I saw the billboard, and I'm ready to text in.
All right, our first volunteer coming on in. And so that'll go out, and it takes a second for text to come back into Salesforce, but that should kick off the flow real quick. And while we're doing that, we can just wait, and it's a good time to talk about how for every single contact, we're actually capturing all the back and forth and the message statuses for each of those. So we're continuously updating our contacts with new message statuses based on maybe the message was delivered or maybe it was undelivered, maybe it was blocked for some reason. All right, so Jacob, our first volunteer, has gone through this onboarding process. And if that all went smoothly, we should have a contact in here. And you can see that just imported his information from that text flow. So this is great, right? I've gotten folks coming in, and maybe I just want to go in and kind of reach out on a one-to-one basis. I can pull up the contact, and we have this Lightning component here, which, by the way, I made large front and center, but it's part of the Lightning interface, so you could put it behind a tab. You could make it third width, however you want to configure it. And we think we made it pretty sleek, too, as far as just trying to make it like texting on your phone as much as possible. So I want to message back and say something like, hey, Jacob, can you make 6 p.m. for your onboarding session? Maybe I can spell someday. There we go. And maybe just as some extra motivation, I want to send an MMS, and I'll attach a picture of a motivational puppy here. So I have a link to send out to Jacob, and I can just click or press enter to send message. We'll have that go out, and that'll take a second to update that message status and get confirmation back that arrived on his phone. And pull that up over here. Uh-oh, oh my gosh. I don't know what I'm about to get back on this MMS here.
Charlie loves Bitmojis, so I love to send them to him.
So we got the message going out here, and we can see that MMS going out. We also have MMS coming back in. And you can imagine, beyond just sending each other Bitmojis, we can send each other useful things, like maybe we have, a proof of some kind of documentation we need, or maybe you're texting with like a restaurant owner and you want them to text back in a menu to you. And we're getting message statuses all the way as we're updating that. So this works pretty well, and we're getting all these delivery confirmations, we're having our one-to-one conversations. But let's imagine our campaign does really well, and we get like 300 volunteers. Going back and forth between these interfaces and kind of going in between all these contacts would kind of be a pain to manage. So we've leveraged the power of Salesforce Campaigns, which allows you to put a list of contacts together to basically do one-to-many outbound broadcasts. And what we can do here, we have a campaign. It's not super interesting right now. We don't have any members in it. But you see we have this button down here that allows you to add opt-ins. So that's going to be everybody who's opted into that volunteer keyword, which is tied to our campaign. And we can click on that. We have one member in our campaign now. And we now get the interface here, which shows us our past SMS broadcasts, all of our deliverability. I can go down here and click on Send New Message. And this brings us to an interface where we can compose our messages out. So I can do things like, hi, add the first name to the message. Are you coming to our event? And we can also put in a media URL. Another thing available in campaigns is we can schedule these messages. So maybe you're up late, burning the midnight oil. It's like 10 p.m. on a Sunday. You don't want to be texting a whole bunch of people all at once. Well, we can actually take this and we can say, all right, we have our training that's happening on Saturday. Let's remind people on Thursday so it's close enough to the event that they have time to make plans. And we can click on this to preview and schedule our message. Get that sent. And we get this nice preview that shows what has been templated into the message. It gives a quick confirmation that it's the right campaign, because we all know you don't want to send to the wrong campaign with the wrong message, the time you're going to be sending out at. And then we can click to schedule this message. It'll send us a quick confirmation that we got it scheduled. We can go in and see our actual list of scheduled messages here. And super useful for knowing what's actually going out, what's been set up. But maybe we're getting a little impatient. We do just want to decide to text Jacob, 10 p.m. on a Sunday, no problem. We'll get that sent out. And coming back here, we see this history of all of our campaigns. And we have this campaign that's going out. We don't have any delivery information for it, but we'll get that information back real soon. So one thing I want to call out here is, we really care about delivery and making sure your messages go through. Twilio is very much about, reliability as a communications partner. And one thing we definitely heard back from users is, it's great you can send out broadcasts, but it's not very useful if we don't know if messages are making it through. And so, as I mentioned before, on each contact, every time we're doing a one-to-one message or a campaign, anytime Twilio sends out to that contact, we're going to update the last message status of that contact. And that all rolls up into the potential deliverability rate for the campaign. So if your volunteers have been texting out and they were texting landlines, or they're texting numbers that were blocked or deactivated, and then you added those folks to a campaign, you'd be able to see that. And you can even see this breakdown here of the deliverability. Maybe the numbers blocked you, maybe the contacts don't have a mobile number, maybe they didn't opt in, and you just go ahead and remove them there. All right. So Jacob's been sent another text message to go out as part of the campaign. You can see that there. And if he responds back in, one of the great things we can do is we actually have an inbox that's accessible. You can put it in the utility toolbar and take it around anywhere with you in Salesforce. Super useful if you need to go look at a report, for example, or just, or getting any other kind of data. You can see where all your messages are coming in. So every time we send out to a campaign, we're able to receive messages back into the inbox and go and respond to them right there. So we got that question back from him. Kind of disappointed there's no Bitmoji here. So I'll be there. Where should I meet you? I forgot where it is. And I can say it's on Beale Street.
I know Beale Street. I'm there a lot. It's where our office is.
I'll send that back out. We can continue on the conversation and follow up with any questions that come up out of part of one of our one-to-many campaigns. There are lots of configuration options available in here, so we have a whole configuration page that you can dive into. Getting started is pretty simple. You just take your Twilio account SID, plug it in, and it connects with all the power of your messaging account. You can configure things like what to do when you get a new inbound lead from a phone number, archiving messages, setting up how the inbox works, and actually configuring individual numbers for every Salesforce user in your org. So there's a bunch more to dive into, and we have a lot of documentation online. Want to call out, if you're interested in learning more, you can go to twilio.com/Salesforce. It's got a bunch of good resources on there. And if you click on this big red button here that says Get the App, It's going to take you to this contact form, but I promise once you fill it out on the other side, there's an immediate link to install the app. You don't have to do any kind of waiting process for that. And it should take just a few minutes to install and get configured and set up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, with that, we'd love to kick it back over to y'all and answer any questions you might have. Here, got one over on the side here. Do we have a mic by chance?
I can talk loud.
Awesome, and we'll repeat the question.
Sure. What about WhatsApp integration? Is that in this yet?
That's a great question. And actually, thanks to the way that Twilio built WhatsApp APIs, I'm going to say this to y'all because you're the Salesforce family. We have not officially supported it within the app, but you can send to WhatsApp. And the reason for that is when you're using the WhatsApp API, all you need to do is include WhatsApp : in front of the number. And if you have a configured WhatsApp number, Twilio is smart enough to say, all right, I'm going to send from that WhatsApp number. So you can actually send that, send that from Salesforce. You just need to change the contact's mobile number to WhatsApp : and then their WhatsApp number.
Very cool.
Thanks. Yeah.
Are you able to use the Twilio Salesforce app in the old interface of Salesforce?
That's a great question. Yes, we worked really hard to make sure it's backward compatible. You can put it into a Visualforce component, and also it also works in the Salesforce One app. So you can configure it to be viewable in those interfaces there. There are a few caveats. The inbox doesn't look exactly the same, and there's some limitations within the app. So you need to go click into the contact and then see their conversation on there. But overall, you can message from that app as well. Yeah?
Do you support on the opt-in e-signature opt-ins the same as text-in opt-ins?
Let me just to double click on that, are we talking about doing a DocuSign link, for example, or?
So if it's got an e-signature, so like the e-signature act, it could be imported in lots of different things they might have interacted with, other than just a texting in of it.
Mm-hmm.
Can that be integrated into that opt-in as well then?
I have to be honest, I'm not 100% sure. As far as e-signature, are they receiving it as an image that gets sent back? Yeah. So you could definitely capture that as an MMS. It'd be a media attachment on the message that comes back in. But as far as integrating that opt-in functionality is really based on the keyword. So as long as it matches that keyword, that's what triggers the opt-in. It's not going to be based on if there was a signature attached.
I'll give you a more specific use case.
Yeah.
So you're doing a volunteer grow event, and people are signing in on tablets if they're there.
Mm-hmm.
They're signing up to be communicated with versus texting a short code and texting yes, log me in. So
Great.
now they've filled out their information on a tablet. They've signed it. It's captured that image. We don't care if sales you want to find it, but can it recognize those opt-ins? When I go to do a campaign, I say, hey, we're all going to go,
Thanks for clarifying. Yeah, so absolutely, and a really common pattern for this is like a web to lead form or something like that. Like you check a box on it, or maybe it's at an event. Exactly, yeah. So they are just Salesforce objects that we've added in there. So I think there'd be a little configuration to just make sure that, if you get a new lead that has an opt-in checked on it, that it knows to create the opt-in record in Twilio. But I actually just did we do a weekly onboarding webinar, and we just did a demo of that. So yes, that's definitely configurable.
Thanks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What happens if you try to call the number that was texted from?
That's a great question. So there are lots of ways, because of Twilio, there are a whole bunch of ways to configure that. And so starting with the most basic, you can, in Twilio, and why not just show this instead of talking about it? I can actually go over to my numbers, and on each number you can configure what it does depending on messaging, or they're talking about messaging or talking about voice. And so for the voice, because Twilio for Salesforce really is just SMS at this point, what you can do is you can do like a TWIML bin, for example. When a call comes in, you could create a TWIML bin, and I think we have a whole, we could redirect it to a conference, we could redirect it to a landline. So that's one option. Another thing that folks are doing more and more commonly is Twilio actually has a capacity to port landline numbers onto our platform. So we will actually work with your provider to sign an agreement and get those numbers onboarded into Twilio so that you can do SMS from them while you keep them with your same voice provider. We've had several customers of Twilio for Salesforce. Essentially, they switch to their voice provider. They also want to add SMS. Their provider does not provide SMS, and so they'll come to us. We'll sign that agreement, get their numbers in their Twilio account, and then in Twilio, they'll actually configure them on a one-to-one basis with the agents that they have in their organization. And while I'm showing you on this interface, I just realized I've been demoing things and I didn't realize it wasn't behind us. While I've been showing this interface that had the personal phone numbers that you can add, you can also configure personal phone numbers in Twilio for Salesforce via like data loader. So every single time you do a data load of those phone numbers to configure them, maybe you have 500 numbers you want to assign to users, we'll check and make sure the Twilio numbers are in that account and then assign it properly. So that's available if you're kind of configuring it for a large organization. Yeah, in the back.
Can we do group messaging was the question. I promised to repeat them, and I've been failing. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, we can't do it with two outbound contacts, if that makes sense. But what we can do is have multiple Salesforce users messaging the same person. And so they can all view on the same contact who it was sent from. And it's depending on how you have personal numbers assigned, it may look different. So for example, if you have one agent with one personal phone number and another one who's just using our sort of generic number pool, the one with the personal number is always going to message from that number. And so they'll still see all those messages on the Salesforce contact, and that'll be available in a common message thread, and it'll say who that came from in Salesforce. But on the user end, you're actually going to see that message come through from a separate number. If you're using, we call them messaging services, which is kind of like a pool of phone numbers. If you're using the messaging service, for agents, they'll basically use a sticky sender, whichever number is kind of closest based on area code. It'll use that and then maintain that relationship so that your customers have the same point of contact. But it's useful because you don't have to have a single phone number for every single person in your Salesforce instance. Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, we can't at this point in time. I think we should review based on the Conversations API what's possible, because that would be pretty game-changing for this app. But right now, Twilio doesn't really do sort of like multi-participant chat sessions or SMS sessions. Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry, the lights are, yeah.
No worries. The opt-in function, is that an opt-in to the phone number or opt-in to a specific campaign, or how is the opt-in managed?
That's a great question. We've actually made some smart decisions, I think, based on how opt-in is supposed to work there. So an opt-in, you should be collecting one for every single phone number. You could have a customer who changes their phone number if they maybe had one phone number for 5 years that was opted in, and then they get a new phone and change that. Technically, for compliance, you're supposed to opt them in again on that new phone number. So every time you change a phone number on a contact, for example, we'll set that opt-in to be inactive, so they're no longer opted in. And then I think the way it works as far as like processing the opt-in goes is it's just going to match based on that word, and it's case insensitive. So kind of regardless of what they text in, if it's capitalized or not, it'll match as long as it's just a one-word text and has that word in there. And sorry, did I get both of your questions?
Is there a case where the consumer is opting into messaging on a certain campaign, but not in another? And so it's a single phone number.
Mm-hmm.
It's got multiple campaigns. How do you know which one they're opted into?
Yeah, so just to repeat the question, if you have two different campaigns and you want to assign them to one phone number, how do you manage that?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. And so you can define multiple opt-in keywords in here and essentially tie them to an individual campaign. And I think from the perspective of, it can be the same phone number that's sending from both those campaigns, but really what matters for the sake of the opt-in is that you're opting into a specific type of content and the cadence of that content is going to be opted in. So they could be sharing the same number, and I always like to say, like, maybe there's a daily news alerts kind of like, campaign. You're getting a single text message every day, and then maybe there's like a monthly kind of like deals thing that you're checking out that you only want to get some, a brief update every once a month. Both those campaigns can come from the same number, but it's just important that you've segmented your audience and captured their specific consent for being put in that opt-in campaign. So as far as creating a new one here, we could create a different keyword here that's like donations, for example. Can save that right up, and then we could actually, we basically have related campaigns. We could create a new campaign for this that would be like donations 2019 maybe. And then as we're advertising, it's really on us just to say, okay, text donations to this one if you want to be associated with this campaign, text volunteer to the other. And we can support both, by the way. So if they send, volunteer and then donate, we'll associate them with both campaigns.
And how do you handle the replication of that opt-in? How do you know which campaign if they respond to stop text? How do you know which one to opt in out?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as far as opting them out, it's kind of an all-at-once type of thing. So if they respond back with one of the industry standard block words, such as like stop, that's something that Twilio actually will automatically respect, and we do that across all of our 10-digit long codes. If someone texts stop back to that number, we'll handle it for you, and we'll also show in Twilio for Salesforce, you can no longer reach that person. It updates their last message status. So if they do that, then you're not going to be able to reach them, unfortunately, and that's just kind of, we want to prevent it from getting to that point. So one thing you can do in here and configure in Twilio for Salesforce is you can actually watch for certain other types of messages coming in, and you can encourage people to unsubscribe from a specific campaign by using a keyword that's specific to that unsubscribe for that campaign. So it'd take a little bit of configuration, but basically you'd be checking to see if a message body matched like stop donations, for example. And if it's all one word or however you want to phrase it, I don't know if you could say undonate or something like that. But basically revoke the opt-in for that specific campaign before they text back in all four letters like stop. So that's the idea. That's the idea there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I think we're just about out of time here, but we would love to take any more questions that you have after the session.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming.
Appreciate it.